What's really good, everybody? This is Nathan Allenbach, and welcome to the podcast where we get into people's stories and go down a bunch of rabbit holes about what's really good in the world. Just wanted to say a quick thank you to everyone who's reviewed the podcast on iTunes recently. It just makes a massive difference in how the show reaches new people. I know I've said this like 1,000 times in these intros, but yeah, I just want to keep hammering it back because it does mean a lot to me. And for anyone who works in any industry that uses Facebook ads or YouTube or podcasts, like, you know that these algorithms are just infinitely mysterious in ways that we just can never understand, but we hope to try to hone in the best we can to get caught in them through, more traffic. So it's all I can say is that every little bit counts. Even if you just hit a star review, that means a ton. I haven't done much to market or brand this podcast outside just trying to produce the best episodes that I can. So any means of organically getting the word out is what it's all about. And if you dig it, please smash those buttons and let's just cross our fingers and hope to get caught in those algorithms. Anyway, for today's episode, I spoke with Noerdy, who is an anonymous and active user online, known for mostly moderating different Reddit communities and just being super active on the platform. He's been the moderator for subreddits like Wholesome Memes and Meme Economy and ones like Political Humor, Westworld, South Park. I'm looking at the list right now. It just keeps going on. He's also the managing director for Meme Insider, which is a monthly magazine that focuses on exactly what it sounds like, just memes and internet culture as a whole. It's really become like my favorite resource for keeping up with this chaos every month. They include interviews with content creators and they do meme analysis, and it's just really funny and well produced, and there's just an infinite amount of content out there, it seems like. I mean, they got podcasts on YouTube, they've got articles, you can find them on Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, pretty much everywhere that you would think you could find this stuff, they're there. So yeah, we talked a bit in our conversation about how there's really nothing else like it out there, and if your job revolves around internet culture in any capacity, I mean, Meme Insider, I promise you, is the go-to for keeping up with this stuff. It's all there. So yeah, we talked about that, talked about how Noerdy first got into Reddit, what it's like moderating these communities, and just a bunch more around all these topics. So yeah, I've got links in the show notes to all the places you can find him personally, and also check out Meme Insider's content. I really, as you can tell, I'm sure I can't recommend it enough. So yeah, that's all I got. Now let's get into what's really good. Noerdy, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's gonna be good, man. This is like the 5th time or something that we've tried to reschedule. So I'm really excited to talk to you. It should be good.
I think your first message for me was back in May or something.
Yeah.
Oh, it was March. Oh, dang. Yeah. March 21st. Yeah, so it's been a minute.
And it was one of those things where every time I'd be like, oh, let's schedule it for this Friday, and then that Friday would come and one of us would have forgotten or something would have came up, and we'd be like, all right, well, next Friday.
Usually me in those cases.
I think it was me a couple times too, but anyway, no, dude, it's great talking to you, and you're a part of a lot of really fascinating just internet subcultures, and you have a reputation, I guess I could say, of being on Reddit specifically from over the years as a mod and someone who's highly involved in meme communities and just different creator communities. So I guess we can start there, and you can make this as short as you want, long as you want. But I mean, how initially did you get involved with Reddit as a platform?
Yeah, absolutely. So my little story about Reddit really comes from in high school. A lot of my friends in high school would use Reddit, check it before class in the mornings. So I got kind of interested in it through them. It was very easy to kind of find little niche subreddits that interested me. And I really was kind of a lurker on Reddit for a couple of years, maybe about a year or so. But I started to realize that a lot of the content posted on Reddit was posted, I'd say about, a third of the content on the front page of specific subreddits like r/pics, r/awe, r/funny, r/gifs, whatever those main subreddits are, about a third of the content that hits the front page of Reddit, it could be maybe about a quarter, a third, but it is a high percentage, is really posted by about 50 people. And I was like, well, that's kind of interesting. That's kind of cool that these 50 people are really driving, a large chunk of content on this website. And so I kind of decided that I was curious about how they did that, just because they would get millions of views. They generate millions of views for Reddit every single day. And I was like, that's kind of interesting. So I figured I might as well learn a little bit about how Reddit works, how their culture works, how, for lack of a better word, how to get lots of people to agree with you on something very easily. And I guess I figured that out. And so what I would do is I would post stuff the night before, like when I was going to bed on Reddit. And by the next morning, I would have 2, 3, 4, 5 posts on the front page, so that when I was at school with my friends, like senior year, and they'd be on their phones or computers looking at Reddit, and I'd point over their shoulders and be like, hey, see that? That's me. And it was really just kind of a bragging point for my friends at that point. I think I did that until I got, like, I don't know, maybe 500,000 karma or something, just kind of for fun. And then I was like, well, that's kind of cool, but I want to hit 1 million karma. So I hit 1 million karma. And then I was like, well, that's not cool enough. I want to see what happens when I can say I have millions of karma. So I hit 2 million link karma. It was pretty easy to do. It only takes about maybe 15 to 30 minutes a week to really do. The level that I was doing it at. Other people like Gallo Boob really spend a lot more time on the website, which is, I spend a lot of time on Reddit, but I try to limit myself. Gallo Boob's a great guy as well, but he's definitely figured out the formula, and he's figured out how to pace himself a lot better than I have. But anyway, yeah, once I hit 2 million link karma on Reddit, I started to get kind of bored with posting content on Reddit. I realized it wasn't really something that I really wanted to spend more time doing, just because there's not really any point to it. I'd watch my ranking rise up and fall in the total karma leaderboards on Reddit. I'd be in the top 50 one day, maybe another day I'd be in the top 30 users on Reddit. And then I was just like, I don't really want to make this competitive. So I kind of stopped doing that. And I started kind of creating communities, like actually creating the communities on Reddit for other people to post content on. And from there, I created a few large communities on Reddit. 2 of the ones that I co-founded and now help lead are Meme Economy, which is a great subreddit. We recently hit 1 million subscribers, which is really cool. And then Wholesome Memes, which is another one, which is one that I'm really proud of because it's really driven kind of a different culture on Reddit. And we recently hit 5 million subscribers on that one, so I made an announcement post, and I was really happy about that. So I was really more ingrained in the actual community, more ingrained in actually not just producing content and sharing content that I'd find on Instagram and Twitter, but really creating communities for other people to create content specifically for, and create communities that people would check would make them happier throughout the day. So that's kind of my short story with Reddit.
So looking back to that time around, like, let's say between 2013-ish and 2015 or 16, I feel like so many of those, which are those meme communities that are now iconic, like the Wholesome Memes or the Meme Economy, or like Dank Memes, Surreal Memes, like Bikini Bottom Twitter, Black People Twitter, like there was all these really massive emergent subreddits that were kind of all coming around the same time periods. I mean, like, looking back to it, do you think there was something going on that was essentially centralizing meme culture around that time, or what was I guess underneath the culture causing all these communities to kind of take off around a similar time?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think really the big change in kind of culture is the fact that a lot of more mainstream platforms started posting memes on them, and that really was able to drive up the volume of memes, instead of just making it kind of a niche thing that you'd find on Tumblr or Reddit or other obscure websites. People started posting memes on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter, and that really started a whole new, momentum and a whole new kind of movement that allowed people all over the internet to kind of localize on different themes and topics. If you look at subreddits like Dank Memes, which is a very interesting subreddit, that's kind of the hub on Reddit for kind of a lot of dank memes, I guess, and it's very active. They have tens of thousands of users on there all the time. Which is really great. I was actually invited to mod there, and I moderated there for a little bit. But they have quotas, and I don't like quotas.
Oh, geez.
Just because I got better things to do with my time than moderate on Reddit. But I mean, it's fine to moderate on Reddit, but I just don't want to have to stress about that and have to really guarantee myself, 10 hours a month or whatever. It's not that bad, but it's kind of there's all these different communities that popped up. And another huge thing that I think is really interesting is that memes have kind of become normalized a lot more. Kids are now growing up with the concept of memes being taught to them and by their friends, talked about in kindergarten and second grade and fourth grade. Maybe not kindergarten, but as soon as they get access to the internet, as soon as they start going online, they start realizing there's this whole world of kids very similar to them that have all these similar interests, and it really is kind of the driving force behind kind of the volume of content. And once you have kind of a volume of content, you'll have all these meta trends going on. Like if you go to the subreddit Me IRL, they always have these meta trends going on, whether it's like Water Guy 12 or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
They have all these kind of themes like, we're just going to post pictures of pineapples on August 5th or something, and then everyone will post pictures of pineapples on August 5th. It's very much kind of a community that people are very easily attracted to, just because it's people that one are as ridiculous as the people who post themselves, but also it kind of leads into that kind of hive mentality that Reddit is so strongly attached to, for better or for worse.
Yeah, and I feel like the trend toward memes becoming more meta across all platforms is really indicative of just how the culture has mainstreamed and kind of collapsed in on itself in a way, because I whenever I talk to people in terms of old internet versus new internet, I always say it in terms of, like, if you look back pre-memes, so between like the late 90s and then like the 2000s up until like 2010, 2011, 2012, so much of what was shared around were image macros and specific viral videos that weren't viral in the sense that we know viral today. Like when something blows up today, whether it's like that selfie kid during the Super Bowl with Justin Timberlake or this like Area 51 meme thing that just happened recently, it's now a globalized trend because everything is so centralized. So when something really goes viral, everybody knows about it. It's shared across all platforms, whereas prior to the internet becoming more centralized, you could have dozens and hundreds and thousands of different things going quote unquote viral, but they might be in their own sort of sub community in a way. So I mean, back then there was like all these different modes and mediums of content, and there weren't as many memes. Like there weren't as many specific images getting shared and replicated and turned into a cultural phenomena. Whereas now you have all these specific subcultures that's exactly their purpose, which is to repurpose specific genres of memes. And when you think about that in terms of like an evolution or like a de-evolution, depending on how you view it, it's like you go from being forced online to be creative and having to come up with something on your own, like essentially create a funny image, create a funny concept, and then hope that it catches on, to now where I can just go on Reddit or Twitter or Instagram or wherever, see a funny meme, and I can just now share that or do like a slight alteration of it, and now my job is done. Like it's very minimal effort. They spread a lot quicker. They're much more relatable and easy to get because of that. But with that trend, now that they are all centralized, you have the subsect of hardcore memers and people that are just deep into the culture that isn't enough for them. Like they'll look at Wholesome Memes or like the meme economy or dank memes and be like, that's all normie. Like that's all just what's being spread around. That's way too popular. So then you get deep into these layers of meta memes where people are having to like compound irony and surrealism and trying to come up with super obscure subject matters that just don't resonate with the masses. It's almost like the anti-populist meme. Like they're trying to engineer things so absurdly that for some like random person like me scrolling through Twitter, I might laugh if I see it, but I know that 99% of the people I send it to aren't going to get it. So it's like, oh, I just won't share that meme. It's not like a SpongeBob meme where every single person that grew up between ages like 35 and now as a child, like it's still going on, they'll just get it immediately. So it's interesting to watch that kind of, depending on how you look at it, de-evolution or evolution of the landscape, you know what I mean?
Right, exactly. It's been an interesting last, decade, and I think, the next decade, and kind of seeing how things kind of build more of a foundation and see how when things kind of will ever maybe settle and become more predictable online, what exactly is going to change, how companies, are going to target that, how consumers are going to react, how, content creators are going to change. I think it's going to be a really interesting next couple of years.
Well, how do you view the trend going, I guess, personally? Like, as someone who's pretty involved in these really, really popular meme communities that essentially sparked on Reddit, and now you see them all over the place on different platforms. There's like Wholesome Meme Twitter pages now and Instagram pages. So, I mean, do you look at the current content generation as like continuing to go up and to continue to spike, or do you see it kind of like leveling out and maybe hitting like some kind of ceiling? Like what's your take on the direction of this trend?
That's a great question. I don't really know for certain, but I like to kind of compare content creation on different platforms to kind of the internet in general. If you remember, 10, 15 years ago, instead of just having, 6 or 7 mega websites where everybody goes to post different content, there were all sorts of websites that people would have to find. It was very hard to kind of centralize a lot of them. A lot of the time people would miss out on a lot of memes because if something was trending, on one website, it wouldn't necessarily be trending on another. And once things started getting a lot more centralized and localized into a lot of big platforms, they started to be able to share content a lot more. And I start to kind of think, potentially in the future, that might be kind of what you see on the actual platforms themselves. If you look at YouTube, for example, 10 years ago, there weren't a lot of really big, YouTube creators. There were maybe Smosh and maybe, a handful of others that were really producing regular kind of content. And a lot of the other content on YouTube, a lot of the viral videos that went viral, 10 years ago, which was still, a lot of viral videos were created back then. A lot of those were just created by individual people. And a lot of them were just created by, some mom pulls out her cell phone and records something. And that was kind of the meme. Now, even though videos now that people pull out their cell phone and record still get millions of views, they're not the trending meme. Just because meme culture has become so much larger, and now the really trending stuff is really centralized and produced by a lot of, at least in my opinion, a lot more of it's being produced by a lot more of the larger creators that have a lot more influence and have a lot more kind of, say what's going to go on. If PewDiePie, who has a large following, decides to, do something in Minecraft, that meme is going to ripple over not just on PewDiePie fan channels, but it's going to kind of change and become memes in other channels as well, whether people know that it came from PewDiePie or not, just because they have a lot more influence. They have control over a larger slice of the pie, and that's something that I see, and that's a trend that I think will continue to happen, just because it's a lot harder for smaller creators to really find motivation to create original content regularly. You really have to have your own little niche area. You have to stand out in a specific way. Kind of just creating memes isn't going to make you special just because anybody can do it now. You have to be able to create something that no one else can. And that's stuff that you do see becoming popular, like Gus Johnson kind of just started his YouTube career a couple of years ago, and he's become very popular because he really popularized a very new and very kind of unique way of producing kind of comedy videos. Short, under a minute, was at least he used to, videos where he just record himself, having a conversation with himself or whatever, and include some props, make it very low budget. And he became very popular on that because, that was kind of a new concept to a lot of people on Reddit. Pro ZD, he would have kind of he would have kind of a similar format, and he would also become popular because that trend was very popular 2 years ago. That's something that you can really see that their careers have really been furthered. Gus has his own TV show now, and that's something that I think is going to continue. But it's a lot harder for kind of the individual content creators to really build as strong of a following as it was 10 years ago. But I think that for better or for worse, I think that in the distant, I think that to be honest, I think that's what's going to happen. A lot of people are going to be following these mega channels, these mega content creators, these mega platforms and accounts on Instagram and on Reddit and on Twitter, and kind of leave the smaller creators behind, because I think a lot of people see kind of the smaller creators as not having as much legitimacy as the larger ones, and maybe we'll see memes, which are honestly not that different from person to person. They'll see the ones from the large content creators be the more legitimate ones.
That's so interesting. Yeah, because I mean, it is a lot for as much access and as many resources as people have today to launch their own channels. It really is still so difficult for smaller creators to get a leg up, whether it's on YouTube or TikTok or whatever it is. I mean, there's still that high level of centralization, like you're talking about, where people are almost so deep into, for lack of a better word, I mean, it really is like fandoms, I think, where people follow these large creators from the time that they're kids, essentially. So, I mean, it takes a lot more effort when you're growing up to find smaller creators. And for people that grew up in the earlier stage of the internet, I mean, that's just what you did, because there were no PewDiePies, like there were no, Gus Johnsons or, like any of these massive creators, whereas those are just like shoved into the mainstream limelight essentially for anyone on the internet now, which it is really strange, man, because it makes me think in terms of just the history of all this and how it almost feels like each generation has their new starting point. Like you kind of alluded to this before, where kids are growing up as young as, the kindergarten age in some cases, where kids are online, they're figuring out memes. And it's so weird because with that, there's not really any kind of infrastructure in place. And I don't know how you put this in the education system anyway, but like in any kind of education setting, even on YouTube, it's difficult to find any type of history for memes and for internet culture. Like for someone like myself, I mean, I've been doing a lot of research on this stuff the past couple years, and it really does. You have to put work in to find any good like storytelling, any good history, like any good chronology of just where certain memes came from, where certain platforms came from, what the communities were like in those platforms, how like certain styles of online video or comedy evolved. And for kids nowadays, like they just don't really care, because like they're growing up and they've been fed this content from such a young age that it's like that's their starting point. And to that point, I mean, it kind of makes it difficult to layer in what I could call like originality, in the sense that, like for someone today on TikTok, say there's like some TikTok star like blowing up right now, it's not that difficult to do that just by essentially stealing content from ex-Viners or old YouTubers or old Twitter accounts, because the kids that'll be relating to that never knew those old Viners or those old YouTubers or those old Twitter accounts, so it all seems fresh to them. It's like they're seeing it with fresh new eyes. So it kind of like creates this weird space where without a comprehensive history or understanding of where the culture came from, it is continues to like compound on itself and repeat itself. And people just keep taking stuff from different platforms across, YouTube to Vine to Twitch to TikTok or whatever. And it's a strange spot. Like I'm seeing more and more of this now, where these, especially on TikTok, because it is such like a younger audience, where it's generating a lot of good memes, I think, but at the same time, the actual audience is so young that it's just very toxic and kind of just childish in a way. So you get a lot of this content theft and just like not really a genuine care for the culture or where that stuff came from, like you might get from certain subreddit communities or from certain old Twitter communities, like Weird Twitter or Joke Twitter or anything like that.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, it's interesting, man. I mean, it's so great that you started the Meme Insider, because this is like one of the premier ways I think people can understand and kind of unpack where the culture is coming from. So, I mean, before we get too far down the rabbit hole with any of these subtopics or whatever, do you want to just kind of explain the origins of that and how it ties into your Reddit career?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess the first thing, just to clarify, was that I did not actually start Meme Insider. I'm in charge of it, and I run it now. But it was actually started on Meme Economy by a user named Digital Eyed Orange, and he kind of had the idea. He created kind of a concept, and then I joined the team and then management was kind of switched around a few times, and I ended up kind of leading the magazine. So as much as I would like to take credit for the idea behind Meme Insider, I did not have it. But I do run it. I have been running it for a couple of years, and I would absolutely, I'll talk about kind of my experience with that a little bit now, and kind of how Reddit has kind of primed me for that.
That's crazy, man. I just assumed that you were the guy because you're the face on everything right now. So that's super interesting. Is that user still involved in any capacity now?
No, I think they've kind of retired from the internet, from what I understand. They're not really involved with as soon as they kind of passed over leadership, they kind of left Meme Insider. We still have kind of contacts and channels for them to contact us, just because I respect their opinion. But I haven't really I have not reached out to them, and they haven't reached out to me in a couple of years in terms of the magazine.
So they had the idea, but just to clarify, I mean, were you the one that essentially took leadership in launching the physical, actual project itself, or how was it in the beginning in terms of delegating?
Yeah, exactly. I'll walk you through the history. So Perfect. The idea was kind of started by a guy on Meme Economy called Digital Orange, and he created kind of a post that was like, hey, we should create a meme Insider magazine. That would be kind of funny. We could talk about memes. And I was like, sure, that's kind of cool. And so there was a big thread, and that thread reached the front page of Reddit, and there were hundreds of comments, and people would be like, hey, I'm a good writer. I'll join the writing team. People were like, oh, I know how to design. Let me join the design team. And I reached in and I said, hey, I have experience in community management. I'd love to be involved in some way. I'd love to help grow kind of the project, link you with my other contacts and network and whatever. And they're like, sure, you can join as well. So I joined up. And then Digitalized Orange left Meme Insider, and he actually passed the Meme Insider project on to a guy named Luke. And Luke ran Meme Insider for about a month or two, a couple of months, and then he realized that Meme Insider was taking up too much time, and he wanted a job. So he actually wanted to work with Philip DeFranco. So he's out and working with Philip DeFranco right now. So he passed on Meme Insider from there to me. So I was in charge of Meme Insider, I think, a couple months after it was first launched.
So in the beginning there, since it kind of emerged directly from the meme economy, was it originated as essentially a branch off of that, or was there a specific mission statement or goal from the get-go that you guys had with it?
Yeah, it was really just kind of a branch off of Meme Economy. The magazine was really originally designed for that subreddit, and because I kind of ran that subreddit and was running the magazine, I was able to easily link the two together and post a lot of posts there being like, hey, we'd like to recruit more writers and more designers and stuff, and I'd be able to get a lot of traction from that subreddit and get a lot of users and readers from that subreddit. But over time, kind of the magazine has really grown into something a bit bigger than that, and we've started shifting our focus off from that specific subreddit into kind of internet culture in general, which I think is something that is really important for us in terms of the long-term kind of sustainability of the project. So that's kind of where we are now, and but the subreddit was a huge kind of part of it. I still would say we kind of are still officially partnered with the subreddit or whatever, just because I'm kind of the common link between the two, and I kind of run both of them, so I can really promote either one in whatever capacity I deem best. But I think that a lot of it's also the magazine really wants to spread its wings. The subreddit, I'm working on a lot of really interesting things within the subreddit that are going to kind of separate it from other subreddits, and we're doing a lot of really cool things with both of them, and different things, but both equally as interesting.
So cool, yeah, because I mean, I know in the beginning it was very heavily meme creator focused, and you were doing a lot of stuff with YouTubers and just what was trending each month. And as time has gone on, it's been much more expansive into various internet personalities and people in the media and all that. So I mean, as you've kind of expanded the mission of it and tried to really branch out into these different areas of the internet subcultures, have you had any luck getting into the media space at all? Because I mean, obviously you're still considered I don't know exactly what your model is, but I know you have a Patreon and everything, and it's not you're not a profitable business in the sense where you're paying people on a payroll or whatever. You're trying to get by.
Right. Yeah, we're all still volunteers.
Right, exactly. So it's volunteer based. I mean, I know you're still in that kind of startup phase, and you're kind of also on the outside of traditional media in the sense where you're offering a very niche coverage point. But I mean, have you been able to kind of branch into those areas at all? Like I know you had Taylor Lorenz on from The Atlantic recently with an interview. So I mean, have you had any luck kind of getting more contacts and more official, not I don't want to say like respect, but you know what I mean, like kind of getting into that space at all?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I guess I'll talk a little bit about kind of the past, what we've done in the past. The first thing I guess was one of the coolest things that's ever happened on Meme Insider was we were mentioned in the New York Times. I'm sorry, the New Yorker magazine, which is a huge magazine. As we're a magazine and they're a magazine, they're kind of the magazine.
Right.
So it was really fascinating to be mentioned in there. And how that worked was I have a lot of contacts at Reddit, a lot of Reddit admins I'm friends with, partially through my work at Reddit originally, and part of it through Meme Insider itself. And so they had me come out to California a couple of years ago, and I gave them a bunch of Meme Insider magazines, and I hope that they'd enjoy them. And I guess some guy from the New Yorker magazine came over to their headquarters and toured it and picked up one of the Meme Insider magazines, and he thought it was kind of funny, so he mentioned it within an article he was writing about Reddit. So I thought that was pretty cool. We have been mentioned, in a couple of other publications, but in terms of actually officially kind of partnering with a larger company in different capacities, that's something that we are working on, and I think that more information about that should be out in about a month or two, and kind of what our next steps are as a company, and how we can grow beyond kind of just the volunteer model. But nothing, I guess, is completely concrete right now. But I would say, maybe in a month or two, I'll be back on this podcast giving you guys an update on kind of a lot of really interesting things that we've been doing. But we are always striving, to really promote the content that we create a lot more. A lot of the volunteers within Meme Insider have been with us for years, and we want to make sure that they kind of get their work recognized, and whether that's trying to get Meme Insider into physical stores, or whether that's promoting Meme Insider a lot more heavily than we do now with zero budget. That's something that I'm interested in kind of figuring out in the future, and I think it'll be kind of interesting, and so I'll have to keep you updated on everything else that changes.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing too, right? Because as you grow, I mean, so much of what's going to determine the reach of the magazine comes down to being able to market it through these massive channels. And it sucks because the people that essentially are the gatekeepers of that, they would be in a lot of ways almost your competitors, like maybe not directly per the content, but just being competing media organizations. And it does stink because like to get to that level, I mean, you really have to kind of push your way in the door. And for people listening, there's not really, other than The Verge, which does some tech reporting, and there's certain sites like The Verge in that kind of that rough tech internet culture area. I know BuzzFeed does some of that stuff, and there's a few other companies that dabble with internet culture, but there's no publication that is solely focused on uncovering these various subcultures, especially with almost, like, I'm sure you can speak to this from the people that work with you, all the people that I've read and that I've seen the designs you do and everything in these issues, it's all very in touch with the culture. Like, there's not anyone working with you that's like detached from what's going on like a weekly and monthly basis online. So I mean, just to have that sort of grassroots movement in your media organization, there's not really any competitor for what you're doing, is there?
Right. Yeah, no, there haven't been anybody who's really been able to pull together the projects that we've done to any real extent. But we're always interested in kind of growing and kind of working and kind of trying to become more legitimate as a company. So there's a lot of really cool things that we've been doing with that. But at the same time, a lot of it's really also balancing the other projects, balancing other things, like with the meme economy subreddit. We're doing a lot of really interesting projects within that, whether that's creating an investment bot that allows you to invest in posts and create firms and collaborate in all sorts of different ways, or working on other projects with other subreddits. There's been a real positive push with that, and I've had a lot of fun.
Yeah, and there's only so much time in the day, right? So I mean,
right.
And you kind of alluded to this before. I mean, saying that you've even in large part over the years stepped back from the level of moderation you were doing previously. So I mean, it's kind of it puts you in a weird spot, right? Because now you have this pretty successful media publication that you're doing work with, and you're trying to make this grow and get more closer to what would be considered mainstream in our context here. So, I mean, like, how do you balance that with working in these subreddits? Because in a lot of ways, you have to continually look back towards specifically meme economy as kind of like the structure that made this entire magazine happen. So, like, you have a lot of not like, I want to say like it's like they're doing, like, they created it, but I mean, they have a lot of like responsibility in helping you build the platform from like that grassroots level of following. So, I mean, how do you at this point, as someone in the position where you're managing the magazine, it's getting more successful, I'm sure you want to keep putting more time and energy into it, but you also have to continually balance that with feeding into these communities that you've helped curate and build over the years?
Yeah, it's definitely been a huge, learning experience for me. I joined this with a zero experience and balancing it all, having to, really manage my time management, especially working, full-time job, and working on other sorts of, working on education, in school. It's really been kind of a real challenge for me, but in a good way. I'm somebody who always likes to, tackle things head on. I like to stay busy. And so it's been a lot of fun.
So at any point, though, like, as the magazine continues to grow, do you see yourself stepping away from moderation altogether, or do you kind of see these two worlds intrinsically tied together for the foreseeable future?
Yeah, so I guess within Reddit itself, my role on Reddit doesn't really take a ton of time for me. A lot of what I do is really like big picture within a lot of specific subreddits. Like on Meme Economy, I'm working with a lot of developers on creating back-end bots and stuff for that. With Wholesome Memes, a lot of it is kind of community outreach as well. With other subreddits that I moderate, such as, like I moderate the South Park subreddit, I moderate the Westworld subreddit, a couple other TV shows that I like, I really just, go to that subreddit. I'm friends with the moderator already, or if I'm friends with the team, or if I just kind of ask. And, I kind of have enough of a presence that people are interested in kind of having me on their team and having me kind of grow those platforms. And so I'll be very heavily moderating those channels, when a new season of my favorite show comes out. So I'm having a lot of fun kind of with that. And that's kind of the extent of my moderation on Reddit.
Interesting. Do you so where you're at right now with all your other endeavors? I mean, obviously this is not it's not like this is paying your bills every month, because like you said, it's largely volunteer based. You're putting money that you get from the Patreon right back into the business model essentially. So I mean, just in the near time, like where you're at right now personally, what have some opportunities been that you've gotten recently from this, being in this position as like a pretty notable moderator and someone who's at the helm of this magazine? Like, have you gotten to get to do any cool work? Have you gotten to meet with any cool people? Like, anything that it kind of come from all this, which is essentially stemmed from you being online?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, a lot of it really comes down to, the kind of community and the networks that you are able to manage and to be able to reach with. So, for instance, sorry, someone just walked in. I kind of lost my train of thought. But I guess to go back to that, yeah. So I guess Reddit, for example, they've been very nice to me. They've been really good to me. They have these moderator road shows that they host, once a year. And I'll go to those and I'll meet, the CEO of Reddit, and I'll give him a copy of Meme Insider and take a picture with him to post on Twitter or whatever. And they're all happy to see me. They all like kind of the content. And it's really been kind of a great way to kind of network with those people kind of in this sphere, with Twitter, kind of Taylor Lorenz, Gene Park, I've really been able to create some sort of a network within there as well, kind of about people who are really interested in kind of the meta internet culture and kind of analysis and how kind of things are going to change in the next, decade or so.
Do you, so where the magazine's at right now, like what are the next steps in terms of like, and you said that you got stuff in the pipeline. I don't mean to get into your spoilers and all of that, but I mean, what production steps are you thinking of taking next in terms of, are you gonna print more articles? Are you gonna move into different formats? Like, do you have anything different kind of in the pipeline that you're thinking of in terms of expanding your audience and expanding the type of content that you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of the, channeling different kind of channels. We have a YouTube channel. which we posted a couple of videos on that have done well. Gotten, I think one of them's gotten over 1 million views. The other one got, I don't know, 300,000 views. And we're trying to be more active in the YouTube sphere. On Instagram, we're definitely trying to work more on that as well. We're doing a lot of work there. We haven't posted much on Instagram in pretty much a month, to be honest, just because I've been so busy. But we have about 50,000 subscribers on Instagram, 50,000 followers, and I'm definitely still trying to grow that Instagram platform as well. It's just I haven't had much time recently, but that's definitely something that I'm going to be working on in the future as well.
It's still blowing up, though. I mean, I've been really surprised at just how fast both those presences have just exploded between your YouTube and Instagram, just from following you for, I guess, it's been like a year and a half or 2 years now, maybe. But it's crazy how much of an audience you've been able to build kind of with cross-pollinating a lot of these internet personalities that you've brought on, like Internet Historian and like Emp Lemon and all these guys who are really... They already have these inbuilt audiences themselves, and then you're essentially offering them a unique platform to get interviewed and to kind of dive into their personal lives and their processes. So it's been really cool to watch just the explosion of these different platforms. I think YouTube would be definitely the spot to continue expanding in, because like you said, you've had some videos do awesome, and it's exactly what more people... I imagine what more people in this particular meme sphere want, because you kind of already have the ones like, I don't know, like I know H3 is kind of, I'm not as into him these days, but I mean, he does that interview format for his podcast where he has a lot of the kind of prominent YouTubers on his show to talk about like their own lives and all that. But there's not a similar mirror of that for like the meme makers and the people who are the more like anonymous based creators that are doing these crazy trends. So you've kind of become like the outlet for that, for all these different memers and people that are doing these really unique videos to come to as like the people that covered their story. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and kind of on Reddit, I mean on Instagram and on YouTube, I've really been able to kind of utilize kind of the trends that I've seen change a lot. As I said kind of at the beginning, in order to make it in these platforms, in 2019, you really have to do something different. You have to stand out in a very specific, niche way. And, I think we've kind of have our own little style, and we've been pushing that. And we, as we create the content that's unique, kind of not in any format that anyone's ever seen before. It's informative, and people respond well to that. As long as there's a billion meme accounts out there, and the market itself is very saturated, and it's very hard to create a new platform. But once you kind of create something new and something kind of different, it's very easy to kind of stand out. It's very easy to kind of build your own kind of platform in a way that's it's much more unique, and just doing something unique, honestly, is all that you need to really stand out and get kind of a following. It's just very, very hard to do that. It's very hard to do something unique. It's very hard to do something unique with high production quality. And we've gotten very lucky that we've been able to do that over the last couple of years.
Yeah, and it's just tough to break into these markets because you need a lot of credibility to be able to interview the people you're asking to get interviewed, because they're kind of not like they're edgelords in the sense where they're problematic, quote unquote, to the media, but they're still on that fringe where they kind of ride the line with different subcultures online that could be deemed as problematic. So I think a lot of them are aware of that, like the sort of associations to 4chan or 8chan or some of these other online platforms, which if you look at the mainstream media, like what the people like the New Yorker, the New York Times, the Atlantic, Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, they've kind of distanced themselves from that corner of the internet because it's like all the coverage that they've done over the years, whether they're covering PewDiePie or they're covering 4chan, it's almost always negative. It's almost always like this is about hit pieces, and whether that's warranted or not warranted from the like a user perspective, that's just all the coverage that you're seeing from a creator perspective. So for those YouTubers and those people that are kind of creating these memes, I'd imagine there's a lot of skepticism toward the media just from being able to like open up about what they do and what their process is like, because you see enough of these interviews with different personalities. And like I said, I mean, I don't want to speak to the intentions and whether the actual specific instances are warranted or not per what the content is, but I can imagine if I was like some meme YouTuber that has like 2 million followers and someone from like the Washington Post or the Wall Street Journal was like, hey, we want to interview for a story or for like about your channel, I would be pretty skeptical, just because over the years there's been a lot of butting heads between the kind of deep internet culture users and then the kind of mainstream media users. So you kind of get to ride that space as someone with credibility, where these internet personalities can look to you and be like, oh, this person's not trying to do like a hit piece or some kind of buzz journalism to get some kind of outrage quote out of me. Like, this is actually about me. You know what I mean? Like, it's actually, you're offering them a platform to share their process, which I think is a really unique and important space, and there's not a lot of other people or places that can lend that credibility, because even for someone like, and I can point to someone like a Taylor Lorenz, who is a journalist for The Atlantic, and I think she does great work. I've followed her for a while, and still though, she has like the stigma of The Atlantic as a parent company to a lot of internet type people that might be like, ooh, that's establishment media, that's mainstream news, like stay away from that. So even with that parallel, you know, like she was tweeting, I remember the other week, about going to VidCon and how like no one wanted to talk to her because it's just like no one wants to talk to a journalist, because it's like, it seems like in most cases journalists are trying to get those pieces out, you know, that are all about controversy, outrage, you know, what's the scoop, what's the drama. So with what you're doing, you get to kind of counter that as someone on the outside of that industry, and you get to be that unique voice to tell their story, you know?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Super cool, man. So I mean, what's the end goal with the magazine itself at this point? Like, do you have like a 5-year plan? Do you have a 1-year plan? Are you looking to get investors? Like, what's the deal? Like, is it kind of just, are you content with it being a passion project till the end of time, or do you have like any kind of more short-term goals with everything?
Yeah, I think to comment on that with the magazine specifically, a lot of it is changing, and I don't really have anything too concrete right now to give you guys. Just because a lot more, internally, a lot of things are changing kind of internally within the magazine, and more information about that will be out in about a month or so. But with other projects that I'm working on, like such as Meme Economy, we really want to start building that into something that is much more concrete, and build that into, we have, I don't know, 100,000 users on there that are actively investing. Maybe not actively, we have 100,000 investors that, have invested, multiple times. And we're really trying to grow that community and grow it, not only just in the subreddit, but also kind of on other platforms as well. So we're definitely trying to do a lot of really fascinating things there. A lot of it really is kind of up in the air right now, just because so much change it's so hard to get certainty when you have, your entire user base is volunteer. So it is kind of a challenge to kind of wake up and be like, I don't know if this thing will still be around, in a couple of months. But, it's still, you got to keep kind of chugging. You got to rely on, your passionate community to keep things going. And, I think, whatever happens, it'll be fun. It'll be fun to see what happens.
Yeah, and like speaking just to that community specifically with meme, with the meme economy, from over the years, I mean, I know it, like when it came out initially, there was like that boom and it blew up, and I remember I'd go to it every week, and it was just like a constantly engaged community where like anytime there was a new meme trending, that was like the spot on Reddit to go. And now, like, we're kind of getting out here with, like, the centralization. There's just so many outlets for those trending tabs, like, where people can go to hundreds and hundreds of different meme communities to kind of get a similar, maybe it's not as organized or not as, like, trend-oriented as the meme economy specifically, with, like, saying this meme is hot, this meme is cold. But you can go to a lot of outlets to see what's trending right now. So, I mean, what's the activity like today compared to when you first started? Like, is it still a pretty lively community? Do you see it going up in a way, or is it kind of like laid dormant or changed in any major way?
I think it's still growing. I think our user base is definitely kind of centralized and kind of become a lot more concrete over the years. But I think, in the future, a lot of the plans we have, whether that's partnering it with other subreddits, we're working on other projects, big projects as well. There's a lot of growth opportunity there, just kind of reach out to different users. And I think it'll be a lot of fun, really, to see what happens. So I'm excited for the future. I'm excited to see what happens. But yeah, should be good.
Cool, man. What other communities are you involved in right now? Like, I know Meme Insider has like a Discord chat. I'm sure you're in dozens of different Discords, and there's all these various communities and networks of people. Like, is there a hot spot right now for you that you've been really engaged with different community members online?
Nothing I can really comment too much on right now. I have kind of a lot of projects kind of in my history that have changed a lot during over the years. But I am absolutely still working on growing a lot of really cool smaller projects as well. So it should be fun.
Cool. This is something I forgot to ask you as I was thinking about it earlier. I noticed at one point that the Meme Insider logo has like a similar vibe to it as the Medium logo.
Yeah.
Have you ever run into anything with that?
So it's interesting you bring that up because we actually had that logo first.
No way.
Yeah. So they actually, I don't think we're big enough for anybody to say that they copied us. But I mean, if they try to sue us, we can just say, hey, this logo was introduced about 4 months after we were started, and we had no idea it existed, so can't really say anything. So, if anything, they kind of copied us.
Oh, that's so funny, man. Yeah, because I remember seeing it and being like, it's because it's not like a glaring thing. There's definitely text differences and all that, but in the world of like icons, where like now when you're on your phone and everything is just the app looking thing, it's like you get used to what that app looks like. And I remember thinking earlier, I'm like, oh yeah, I should probably mention something about that, because I wonder if there's been any issues. Because have you thought about doing like a meme, like a branded meme war with them or something, where you can kind of like go after them in any way?
I haven't really wanted to engage them too much.
Worried about their legal department?
Pretty much, yeah. So they introduced their new logo in August of 2017, which kind of replaces the old green like 3D one.
Right.
And their new logo is the one that you're talking about. So yeah, it is kind of interesting. I mean, I'm not gonna go poke at them. I think I actually did DM them on their Twitter, be like, hey, LOL, your new logo is kind of, I like your style. They never replied or anything, of course. But it is kind of funny that there has been some similarities between there.
That's great, man. And yeah, just one more thing I was thinking before we start wrapping it up here. Was there? I know we were kind of talking earlier about just how you've expanded your reach and your network into the YouTube sphere and then Instagram, and you're trying to just reach these different communities and have more than one outlet for the media. And I know you've produced, or not you specifically, but Meme Insider has produced just various different articles from the issues, and then also like I know you post some through the website. I'm not sure how active they are, but is that something, like, have you had any luck with actually like pitching those articles and getting them into any kind of mainstream light? Because I feel like, again, from a writing perspective, I mean, that's a lot. It's a lot different than the audio-visual element, I know, but I mean, there's still a big market there, I think, for actual, insider takes within the meme community when it's in writing. Like, has that been a big branch of what you're doing at all, or is that just kind of something in the background that gets done?
Yeah, a lot of it, we are kind of our in the next couple of months, this fall and this winter, we are going to be revamping the articles section on our website. We're going to be putting out, multiple articles a day. So I think that'll be a lot of fun.
Awesome. Yeah, because that's just like, I'd love to see more of that style of article. You just don't really, like most of what you see covered in like these tech news companies, it's mostly like flavor of the week trends that like what are the influencers on Instagram doing this week, or like what are the teens into right now. And it's just right. It's usually very, not that there's anything wrong with it, but it's usually just very surface level, like let's touch on these hot button trends, versus like good analysis of where these things are coming from and actually doing some deep dives and some history. So that's great. Like, I'd love to see more of the writing from you guys. Super cool. Cool, man. Well, thanks so much again for doing this. And I know you have a pretty great Patreon and like Discord community. Is there anything you wanted to plug with that, or anything elsewhere you want to take people?
Right now, no. I'd say if you want to follow us, go to our website, go to our Instagram, go to our Twitter. Our Patreon, we actually are revamping kind of how we're going to be selling magazines, and so we've kind of put a pause on Patreon for right now. But we are going to be, hoping to get that all released in the next month or so.
Awesome. Sounds good, man. Yeah, thanks so much again for the time. And yeah, make sure everybody listen, follow the Noerdy. It's at the Noerdy on Twitter. And do you have the same handle on other platforms, or is that like the platform you're most active on? It's Twitter.
That's kind of the platform that I'm most active on. You can find me on Reddit on Noerdy. That's Noerdy, or on Twitter. That's the Noerdy. Then you can find me on there and reach out to me on there, and I'll get back to you.
Awesome. Meme expert and innovator.
I don't know about that, but definitely someone who has a lot of passion about growing projects.
Hey, not many people can say they've been able to grow the types of communities you have, and also produced the level of content you have. So I really appreciate it, man. Thanks so much for the work you do and taking the time for this. It's been awesome.
Awesome.
All right, see you, man.
All right, see you.